May the 4th, 2026. Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Argo.
Present.
Mr. Horton. Here. Mr. Wynn.
Here.
Ms. Schaefer.
Here.
Ms. Casper.
Here. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, Ohio Revised Code 121.22G1A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Do we? Second, we still need to approve
We
the
still need to
agenda.
approve the
Oh, I'm
agenda.
sorry.
So,
Skipping ahead and choking myself. Okay, forget that.
We can pause on that.
Pause on that. I needed a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
second.
Any discussion? Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Wynn.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. Argo.
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes. Now I will take, was it Mr. Argo that was the first?
Ms. Ben.
Ben, Mr. Wynn, do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Wynn.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. Argo.
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes. We will return. Everyone ready? Okay, I'm going to pull us out of executive session, and we will continue with board reports. Ben, now that you've taken a sip.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, you're first with Butler Tech.
It's all right. So there's going to be a number of events. I know that I gave you guys sort of the invitation to those events. We're going to have graduation pretty soon here. I think Butler Tech's graduation is the same night as Central, so I will be at that one. Nothing crazy new. We just wrapped up our third ribbon cutting. I don't know if no, I don't think we did have a board meeting in between that time, but we just wrapped up their third ribbon cutting for the Bioscience Center expansion. It was a wonderful, tremendous event. I think in total, and certainly Dr. Sprankles can clarify this, but I believe there will be 600 new positions opened for kids to have those opportunities in Butler Tech, and that includes satellite campuses, but certainly through the AmHub, Aviation Center, and the Bioscience Center expansion. So a lot of new creative opportunities that are being opened up for students, and obviously that includes Lakota students, so we're really excited about that.
Great. Community Engagement Committee. Alex, do you want to speak? Ashley, me? We had that meeting. It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about how if we were to come to consensus on something, how we would kind of proceed with kind of some facilities-based things. We also talked about a potential community conversation for the fall, although I think there's some details still to narrow down about that. But so, what else am I
We talked a
forgetting?
little bit about the signage, did you, where, you can
We're
you can
getting-
speak to that.
Yeah, we talked about signage, just kind of like, for lack of a better way to say it, Love Lakota signage, that families can put in the yard to say that you just proudly attend Lakota local schools. We do have a price quote on that, starting with around like 750 signs, just to be able to distribute it at the various events at the end of the year. The communications team has drafted up some designs, and we are currently reviewing those so that we can share those again with family, like just share, like they're optional. Families can grab them. Again, we're thinking about graduations. We're thinking about having them at the Welcome Center for enrollments and new kindergarten families. Just something to proudly say. We have sports signs and things like that, but just being a student in Lakota and being proud to display that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's all we did. Policy, we'll have the second reads.
We have the second reads. We did have a policy committee last month as well, and we reviewed several policies that will be at the May meeting for the first read, and we had some questions about some that Norm is looking at as well to make sure that they're just compliant with all the templates and things. So those will be coming up at the first read in the next May meeting. May meeting. We're in May.
We even asked Neola to come up with a policy on something.
Yes, we did. Yeah. We asked some questions that they were like, hold on, we're going to have to go do some digging on that. Yes.
We said, we don't want our own policy,
Yes.
we want Neola to do a policy.
Do it for us, Norm. Is that all for policy? Facilities. Do we?
Facilities Committee, if you remember, we did not have our last one because it tied up to the last week's board meeting where we thought we were going to have this rich discussion that we were going to have tonight. So we had actually canceled that facilities meeting because of the timing of that. So we will have one. I think our next one is next week, I think after our planning meeting on the 12th.
Finance.
We canceled the April meeting, but then we will have a meeting on May 18th where both City of Monroe will have representatives there to talk about a TIF opportunity, as well as Liberty Township has another opportunity that they would like to share. So we'll be talking about that, and then hopefully some revisions on the 5-year forecast, assuming we have time. It's turning into quite the agenda.
I guess so.
For the Finance Committee, you'll be going a long time.
I know.
Anybody, board professional development, has anybody gone to some professional development? No? All right. And then as listed, our committee dates and times are listed. Sorry, my thing is not cooperating. I'm just going to look at the paper one because this one is not cooperating. Okay, we are at the point where we are doing our board action items, and let's start with action A to the second read and the approval of the board policies. take that. Is there, I would personally like to pull out a policy.
I would like to separate 3313.2, the public participation at board meetings, into a separate vote from the remainder of the policies.
Okay. So,
Is that 169.1?
Oh, sorry, do I have the, oh, I did the revised code, my apologies. I read the revised code, rotten thing from my notes here, yep, I'm sorry.
okay, so we're going to pull out 069.
Can I ask why are we pulling that out?
I would like to vote separately on that.
I understand, I just remember at the April 6th meeting, it was objected to when I brought it up on the agenda, adding specifically just that policy. This board objected to me doing that, saying we don't want to give any special attention to any particular policy.
No, what we objected to was you wanted to pull that out and do an emergency second read and not do the second read here. She just wants to pull out the policy. She has the right to pull the policy out when we're going to vote. What you wanted to do that we did not vote on was take one policy and do an emergency second read and leave all the other policies behind.
I'm not suggesting we don't do a vote on this. I'm
Well, I
simply-
understand.
We're still voting. Otherwise, there's no way if she
Just
has-
wanted to ask a clarifying
That's the
question.
clarification
Okay.
piece.
Can I request to pull out PO 5113.01 to vote separately?
0.01,
Yeah. It's the inter-district open enrollment.
okay. Okay, so we will take a motion for the reading of the vote on 0169.1 first. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have discussion?
Again, we've had much discussion about this particular policy. Again, I think it's fairly clear where most members of the board stand on this, but I just wanted to state I am not in support of this policy, and the reasons why. I believe we've always had opportunities for public comment. While they've looked differently because they're before the meeting, we have never stopped doing that. The difference is in the past, when we used to have a public participation in the meeting, we had in our rules that if you were going to make disparaging comments about a staff member, that those had to be an executive session. We were told that we were no longer able to do that, that we couldn't state if anything was said about a staff member, we had to allow good and bad. That concerns me with this being back in the meeting, and that our recording is our record of our meeting, that at this point, I feel like we become complicit if somebody says something disparaging that may or may not be true about a staff member. They cannot defend their name, and now it is part of the public record, and that is not something that I feel like is what we should be doing. I also am concerned that we saw a drop in our success, and our meetings became, and the news about our meetings became the theatrics that were happening at the microphone versus the positive work of the board. And I am concerned that that will happen again, and I don't want to see us get distracted because somebody is choosing to make statements that don't necessarily have to be accurate at the mic and disrupting our meetings. And that's my piece.
Anybody else?
Well, I have to share that I am hugely in favor of this policy. It's my opinion that public comment has been suspended, at least as it traditionally happens, for the past 3 years. I think when we're talking about heading into a momentous levy discussion, people would like the opportunity. Sometimes it's just symbolic. Sometimes it's just symbolic for people. Sometimes it's just therapeutic for people to go up to that microphone, wherever it might be, and be able to voice an opinion. But you know what? No one can at least then accuse Lakota of not listening. Whether it's on the meeting being recorded or in an email sent to this board, all of that's public record regardless. So I'm not, it is not my concern that, we're encouraging or alleviating someone's superstar status or whatever it is if they decide to come up to this board and say a bunch of, crazy stuff. Ultimately, I don't believe that it's any local government's ability to stop listening. And, you know, so I'm encouraging this board pass that policy, certainly in light of the levy discussion. I don't think any levy discussion can be had on this table or with our community without giving them an opportunity to come up and speak at the microphone.
Okay, just to clarify, we've had many meetings where people have been at the microphone. It's just prior to the meeting's recording. So I just want to clarify that people have had the opportunity to speak to this board at a microphone.
I think that's a misguided perception that's out there, that we have not allowed the public to speak. It just looked different. It just looked different when we had it outside of the meeting for the reasons that Mrs. Schaefer stated. I am also opposed, and I am a will of the board person. So if this policy is approved, I will respectfully participate in that. But I don't think that it is I'm concerned. I'm just concerned. And I think if you sat on this side of the table during the chaos, you would be also concerned. And I know that we hope that it's not going to be the same. We hope that people are going to be more respectful. And I very much hope that our staff isn't unfairly accused of something that isn't accurate and is now a record into the minutes. It just worries me what could happen. So that's just my 2 cents. And again, I do want to clarify, we have listened to the community. It's just been before the meeting. And also I want to reiterate, there are other ways for people to talk to us. It's not the only option. I absolutely fully endorse people coming and speaking to us, but I just don't want it to be said that we haven't been doing public comments in the meeting, so that means no one is talking to us. There is other ways for the community to speak to the board. That's all. Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and add that I do think it's probably not fair to say that we haven't had public comment. Like we've said, it's been a little different way, and you know, I've spoke both during a meeting as a member of the public at that, and at one of those sessions that were before the board meetings. And I guess from my perspective, it just seems like there's some logistical issues that really occur when we take it out of the meeting. And if you were at our organization meeting, you would have seen kind of the worst case scenario of what those logistical issues look like. And you know, the issue with, you know, what people may or may not say about staff, that was the thing that really kind of has me torn. We looked at, were there different ways where we could say, okay, you just can't talk about staff, and it just seems like that would be impossible to enforce. I'll also say that from a accessibility standpoint, I think when we're trying to build trust with the community, I think being able to just come and have it kind of like someone comes for the first time because they heard about something, or they like to, you know, they don't know how to what the email is for the board. And there are certainly many ways that people reach out to us, and we hear from people. But having as many kind of avenues as possible, I think, is going to make us better. I think the transparency component of someone comes and says it, and it's on that video, while we may sometimes hear things that we don't want to see, I do think that the transparency kind of outweighs the sometimes unproductive, bad things that could be said. And I think that's about all that I have additionally to say on that at this point.
Anybody else?
Am I good to go?
Yep.
All right.
You're
I'll
good
just
if you're good.
share kind of two other things. when I was running for this position, and even after the fact, I've run into people at Walgreens, I've run into people at Kroger. And there was a particular case at Walgreens. I was with my sister. We were buying a card for my grandmother, and a lady came up to me, and she's visibly upset, and she's visibly not in favor of my candidacy. And she has a lot of choice words to say, and this, that, and the other, and this is in front of my sister. And you know what I told my sister? I said, regardless of whether or not what she said, I don't feel it was appropriate. But I love that she feels I love that she feels like she can say something. And that's really what I'm citing on. I love the opportunity for people to be able to say something and feel like they can get something off their chest. The second thing that I'll say is, I was, believe it or not, I was a rather shy student. And sometimes it really helps when somebody raises their hand in front of the classrooms, asks a question. Even if it might be a dumb question, they raise their hand and they ask the teacher and they get an answer. And you know what? Maybe the shy students were in the room. I get to hear that answer. We have a very big community. Not a lot of people can come to a board meeting. Not a lot of people do come to a board meeting, but a lot of people have the same concerns. And so if there's just one brave person who comes to a board meeting and they get that concern addressed on the meeting, or at least out there in the meeting, and that's a lot of different households that concern, that question can be answered to. And that's why I feel it's important to have it in the meeting recorded so that people can see that.
Well, you realize, though, that we don't answer the public comment question
Right.
in the meeting. Okay, I just want to clarify
Well,
that.
maybe
But to bring
even
up
to
the
that.
concern that somebody else might have.
Yes.
Yes.
And even, maybe say a
Yes.
parent says, hey, I know so-and-so.
Right.
She came up and spoke at the board meeting. I wonder if she got an answer. And then going up to her and saying, what did the board respond to you with? Well, the board was very receptive to the answer. That's great. I want people to have that. And I feel right now the perception, and my view, is that they don't have that as open, transparent.
Okay. Is that all? Okay, Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Wynn?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
No.
Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
No. Okay, policy passes. Now we will talk, I need a motion for 5113.01. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And now I have discussion.
Yeah, I wanted this broken out different or separate because I would like to ask the board, although it's a second read, to vote no against this. And the reason for that is it's cognizant of me that we are asking to pass this on May 4th when it's backdating to the effective date of April 1st. The original policies had the time for intra-district and open enrollment until the end of the last business day of May. And so, one, it's a little funky, but also in this change that we've seen this year, I know there's a number of families that haven't necessarily understood that change and may not be compliant with the April 1st deadline. And I think in the interest of making sure that all the families are heard and making sure that they have the time to address, I'd hate for families to be left out when we're talking about what schools they're attending and what schools they've had attended, not to have the care and diligence given to them. So if we were to vote no on this, then that would allow them the opportunity to make sure that they submit their forms by the end of the last business day of May, and make sure that those families and have the chance to address something rather than having a change prevent them and forcing them to change their schools of residence.
Is there anybody else? Dr. Whiteley, do you want to address this since we have already had this? Since the
Yes.
process is in place? And
There are multiple changes to that policy, so I just want to say if we vote no on it, it would not just be the deadline, like it would null and void that entire kind of changes of the policy, not just the deadline itself. But the reason for evaluating the ASC forms and changing the process this year is because even though the form was required every year in the past, it had been kind of carte blanched approved, and in doing so, it had created some really unique dynamics as far as enrollment, particularly in our K-6 buildings, and also perpetuated some narratives around K-12, around what buildings offer and the perceptions around athletics and academics. And so in the effort to kind of look at space and make sure that children are attending their a resident school, which would be their neighborhood school by where they live. That is the policy as you see it revised, and that was discussed. And the April 1st deadline was to make sure that we could section and staff appropriately. So because again, when you have a swing of 60 ASC forms, particularly like we do in one of our elementary schools, that can change staffing needs and scheduling. And again, we need to put those children back and make sure that we can't, in their neighborhood schools, and be able to communicate that. So that was why that deadline was moved up, because staffing implications are a result of that. If that goes back to May, we would just have to reevaluate some staffing pieces as well. But again, the impetus is to have children attend their neighborhood schools so that we can better look at efficiencies as far as classroom size, transportation, I know is up on the agenda for tonight as well, but to make sure we look at those as a collective.
And as we've talked this in the past, I don't think there's a lot of dissension as far as the intent, but a policy is only as good as its implementation. And I worry that there are a number of families that are going to get caught in the gap here. And we've heard from some of those families already. And so with the idea that we want to make sure that we take the best care possible of our families, I want to make sure that we give that opportunity for them to make sure that they've got everything completed on the original deadlines that they have been operating under. I don't think this is new requests. This is more to address people who've had this alternative school of choice. And we even say in here, that we try to maintain that if possible. So again, I'm worried that as we've gotten down this road and the timing of this, we're now finding out that the implementation is potentially leaving many, many, many families in a surprise situation. And I don't feel this is as light as, tickets to an event or something like that. This is literally the schools that they've been going to or that they've been planning to go to for years. So again, I would just urge the board to vote no to give the parents a chance to make sure that they do what's needed.
When the policy committee came up with the policy, you knew the deadlines, correct? We knew.
We discussed that it would mirror the process that we had outlined on the form that we had created, which had those deadlines of April 1st.
Can you please share, I guess, two things? Are you asking to modify the policy to change the deadline, or to vote no on the entire policy? And then a secondary question is, what communication has gone out to families on this issue? So if you want to start with, what are you asking?
So again, I think my biggest concern is the change in date and the surprise that our families have been encountering on that. So if it is possible to amend it here without going back to policy committee and going through a second read, I would be open to that. However, in light of the fact that we've got families that are confused by this situation, I want to protect the families.
There were 14 communications sent around this deadline, starting at least a month in advance and going at a weekly cadence, even the day before they were due. Also, anyone on an ASC form that was currently in existence, I know that buildings, office managers, and athletic directors reached out to make sure that people were aware that they were on an ASC form, and communications about late forms have been coming from our assistant superintendent to those families already to say that they have missed the deadline and late submissions are not, allowable. So those communications have already started quite a bit.
So 14?
Pardon?
14?
There were 14 communications between Parent Square, the website, direct emails, principals put it in their newsletters. So there were multiple facets of communication that families received about this. And like I said, office managers, with the help of the enrollment center, and also athletic directors reached out to families that were on existing ASC forms in the previous year.
So the repercussions of doing it till May 31st?
There could be staffing implications more so in K-6 than in 7-12. But again, we would have to go back and communicate with all of those families. We would have to open that form back up. And again, you talk about the families who have missed the deadline, but I think that would also be to first appliers as well, because you can't close the form for people who open the form for just people who missed the deadline. I mean, I think we would be opening the form to the entire community until the end of that May deadline.
Which would be consistent with what we've done in the past from a timing standpoint, and we've been able to handle.
Correct, but staffing implications were never determined on ASC forms. We actually did it. Again, everybody was just grandfathered in. There was no denial previously. Every ASC form that was received was approved in past years. And so that is why the email communication started out with, this is a new process. Because in the approval of ASC forms every year, that's kind of how we've got these buildings that have 60 ASC forms, and some have 7 and some have 6. And we were trying to make sure that we were balancing accordingly with our resident schools.
Anybody else? Okay, Adam, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Horton,
No.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Argo,
Yes.
Mr. Nguyen,
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes. Can we take the second read and A through E altogether? Anybody need any of that pulled out before I make the motion? Okay, I'll need a motion to take the balance of the second read policies and A through E, secure cybersecurity program, the approval of the Peterman pricing contract, the approval of the revised job descriptions, and the approval of the new job descriptions. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Wiley, can you go through these, please, or Adam, whoever?
The cybersecurity program is in response to House Bill 96. These need to be in effect for the 26-27 school year, and states will begin auditing that we have this policy in place. Again, we worked with a third-party vendor to make sure that we were in compliance in all of this. So really, this is security, like to prevent hackers and things like that. So this is not a public-facing document because of those security pieces, but this is a piece that we need in place for House Bill 96. As far as C, this is just for the pricing proposal for Peterman. This is a one-year contract, or one-year pricing proposal, one-year pricing proposal. From that pricing proposal, if approved, Adam and I would then work with Peterman, in addition with Craig, our Executive Director of Operations, to start looking at what that actual CBA or collective bargaining agreement language looks like to make sure that it is in line. So that is why it is worded at that. This night's approval is just on the pricing proposal, not the full contract itself. Job descriptions, approval of revised job descriptions, the ones that you see there, at least from the superintendent's side of the house, is because the last ones you approved had 260 workday calendars. They actually should have been 227s. That's the only change on those. So it's just a wrong work calendar date. And then the new job descriptions that you see there are a combination of the new positions that we had talked about in the organizational chart. One that might draw your attention that you might just have a question on is we changed the name. We played with different names all the way till the end. That Director of Career Exploration and Strategic Partnerships, we had originally were going to call that the CCWMR to be in line with the report card in the curriculum department, but we changed that title just because we thought it was more fitting, and in case the state changed the nomenclature, we didn't want to be tied to that. So that particular one is in response to that additional role that we're adding in the curriculum department.
Then on the revised job descriptions that we have within the finance office, that was due to some of the duties and experience, getting that more aligned. And then on the new job description, there was one miss. That was the finance department generalist, our entry-level position.
And that's the one, okay.
The only other one I do want to draw attention to is the transportation director piece for the new position. I know we've had a lot of conversations about transportation. This is to really help us monitor our efficiency. We are in the hopes of striving to get back to the K through 12 busing model in this district, and so really having that transportation director that would work under and in response to Mr. Hatfield, and again forming a transportation committee would help us look at that efficiency as we work towards that goal of K through 12 busing.
Any questions? Any other comments? Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Argo,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Nguyen,
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes. Board action items, the resolutions. Adam, how can we do this that we can have a discussion? Do I have to do these all separately? Can we have a discussion before we make the motion?
If it went well the last time through, we could do it that way again, where we do a motion second on each one. We could talk about them at that point, and then if we don't have any discussion, we could table. We could
So-
talk about now, however you guys prefer. It's really up to you guys.
How would the board, what is the will of the board? Do you want to do them individually? Because we may do more than one, correct? We may send more than one?
So let's start by talking about what this is. So what this section is this is a resolution of necessity, which would be for 3 of the items, and then a certification of the estimated tax rates. That's for the earned income tax that's on there. This is only if any or all of these are approved, that just sends them to the next level of they have to now go to either the county auditor or the Department of Tax for certification on what the actual values, collections, millage, all of those things look like, so that then they could come back for a resolution to proceed, which is the point when then it would go onto the ballot.
Okay.
This is not putting anything on the
Anything on the
ballot.
ballot,
This is
right.
just certifying the information so that then the board could take action on that.
Okay, let's go one by one then. So I need a motion for the resolution of necessity for the bond levy for $223,483,492, 200 units. You know what I mean. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, discussion on this.
So this would be having a bond issue at the same value as what the bond that's rolling off, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, this is looking at a 2.23 mil ballot issue that would be to finance roughly about $223.48 million for school facilities over a 37-year period of time.
So this would be no tax increase. This would just equal the bond that is rolling off.
That is correct. Cost per 100,000, $78.05 per 100,000 of appraised value. And then on a $350,000 home, that would be $273.18 per year.
Here. Okay. Is there any discussion on this that, anybody?
I mean, again, we've had so many meetings and discussions on facilities and what the best way to do this is. I think we all would probably pick a slightly different way potentially, and I personally don't believe that there is one best way. I think there's a lot of different options of how we might look at this and what the best way to do this is. You know, I, at the last facilities meeting, made a case that we shouldn't do the buildings before we do the operating that would get us through to when the TIFs roll off. But I also understand Alex made a good argument of our building costs are going up, and perhaps it's more palatable for people to take this in smaller chunks and to be able to do this in a phased-in approach, which I can appreciate that piece as well. Particularly, I mean, there's always economic factors to consider, and we're certainly seeing things changing at the state level. I originally, and again, I've been very transparent that I'm going to flip-flop on this probably multiple times because I think there's so many different ways to look at it. I originally, and I still do think that there's value in switching some of the burden off of property taxes and onto income tax, so you're having people pay it who actually are earning an income, and helping to save the burden off of those who are senior citizens or may not have income but are property rich and income poor. But then I also appreciate the perspective that if you do that, you take all the onus off of any businesses in the area and put it all on our residents, and it's a smaller group of residents, so then they're facing a bigger burden. I guess as of tonight, my thought is perhaps maybe doing, like, rather than trying to get everything all at once, because we can wait for a period of time for our operating levy, to allow people to not pay prior to when it's absolutely necessary. If we move forward with the bond levy that's equal to what's rolling off, then we could look at a much smaller earned income tax potentially down the road when that money's needed, and it would be even less than 0.75%, so less than 1% already, but it could be even smaller than that. Perhaps it could be 0.5% or 0.25%, if we were to wait and separate these into two issues. So I am amenable to either one at this point, is where my perspective, for what it's worth, is of where everyone else is on this board.
Anybody else have any comment? Are we ready to vote on this? Or?
I don't disagree with really any of that on a, face value. I I would caution against ever saying no new taxes, against ever saying, well, you're only paying what you're paying now, or there's no increase. I would agree. You know, if we go with just the bond, and then we go with maybe a smaller, whatever the board would decide that looks like, you know, sure. But I don't want to, and I thought I appreciated the board's perspective on this from our special meeting on April 6th. How are we going to go about this? Because my concern is that we are going to go with the nice political catchphrases of no new taxes or this, that, or the other, when in fact it's not true. We have a potential 3.6 operating levy looming on the horizon. I think that it's fair to say that we can take this in two chunks and have buildings separate from operating and staffing on a ballot. But in terms of conversationally and how members of this board, how the superintendent, and then our treasurer go forward into this levy decision for November, I would caution against portraying it as just the bond issue. Because, right, this doesn't mitigate the necessity of an operating.
Yeah,
And
I
I'd be
think
very transparent with
the
that.
no new taxes is just for the bond issue. This
Right.
would not be an increase, so that's
Yeah.
what-
I mean,
I wasn't saying no new taxes ever.
Right.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That sounds really fun.
Okay, so, thank you, Ben, I appreciate that. Does anybody else have anything? All right, we'll take a vote. I'm
guess I'll-
sorry, Alex.
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I mean, I guess, yeah, like you said, you know, the no new taxes piece is just for that, and we need to be transparent that if everything stays exactly the way it is right now and nothing changes, then we see this operating need in the future. I will say that as I have been paying attention, that there has not been a year where we have not had an operating levy forecasted out further, and things change, and we, as a district, figure out ways to pull levers. I think as Mr. Horton has said in the past, we have fewer levers now than we used to have to pull. But yeah, I think I would hope we'd all be in agreement that we need to be transparent, that need is out there. But yeah, I think if you think of it from like a household, if you have some type of new household need, grocery prices are going up, gas prices are going up, or you want to do an addition on your house, whatever. A lot of times it's a big problem, and solving big problems can be hard. We found that out last November. So, you know, maybe you do some overtime, or you try to get a raise at work, or you look for a new job. There's lots of different things, even as an individual in a household, that you can do. So I think going with this is kind of doing that
This is our,
perspective.
basically, this is step one, phase one, however, step A. We know that in the future, again, based on everything we know and things we don't, that we can't control, that this is just a step one to get us to a point where we can make some decisions based on the rest of the,
Given where we are with our 5-year forecast and the fact that we are forecasting an operational levy in 2028, which is 2 years away, and if that is not in the 5-year forecast, then we're looking at deficit spending in 2028. I would never want to throw around the phrase no new taxes at this point, because our baseline 5-year forecast that we reported to the state assumes new taxes.
okay, I am not saying no new taxes.
I'm just-
It's just saying,
This is
for the purpose of
I'm
this.
saying those sound bites would come back to haunt us at any future date. And so while, yes, technically the bond would be a replacement of bonds that are rolling off, that's a catchphrase that I think obscures and makes things more complicated for us. So that's my only caution to the board, is that we talk about it as a replacement of the bonds rolling off.
Okay,
So it's not to cause confusion.
anybody else? All right, Adam, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
No.
Mr. Wynn?
Abstain.
Ms. Casper?
Yes. So I don't know if that,
It does.
it does, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, resolution of necessity for the current bond and with an additional 3 mils of PI. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All right, this motion fails for lack of a second. Resolution of necessity for the bond levy and a 1 mil PI and a 1.5 mil operating. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All right, that motion fails for lack of a second. This is a resolution requesting the certification of estimated taxes of 0.75% earned income tax. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion?
Again, I think this is the decision of whether you try to do everything in one increment or if you try to break it into multiple increments. I think you can make a case either way. But I do think that this would solve both the building and the operating piece if we were able to get support for this issue.
I appreciate that this solution allows us to let the bond millage roll off, which gives property tax relief to those in our community, where that has become more of a burden over the past 10, 15 years than it traditionally has been, especially in light of all of the appraisal values that have gone up, while allowing us to still continue forward in a way that would help us get where we need to be.
Any other discussion?
I'll share my perspective in talking with people. People are going to charge hell with a squirt gun over an earned income tax. I've heard people say that, on this board that, well, we have the lowest effective millage rate of any community around, and use that as some sort of excuse to get even with Springboro, use it as an excuse to get even with Hamilton or Mason or other districts. I think having, our effective millage rate at 44, 46 for Liberty Townships and Westchester Townships respectively, I don't think that that's some sort of punchline to jump up to 55 with everybody else, jump up to 57. I would say where our effective millage rate is for the two townships isn't just by chance or sheer accident. It's the culmination of, I would say, decades of strong fiscally responsible leadership that has recognized that schools might keep this community attractive, but also a lack of an income tax. I mean, you look at every other place in Butler County, and we're this sort of safe haven from an income tax. I think that that's attractive to businesses, to individuals, to people wanting to raise a family. I was looking at Treasurers Inc.'s email. I mean, we're talking about $1,000 on your income if you live in Liberty Township, $800 if you live in Westchester Township on your income. I know a lot of people were concerned about the whole property tax issue and whether or not it's going to make the ballot. It's not going to make the ballot. Yes, we're not shifting the burden on our fixed income residents, and that's great. That's half the issue. But now, instead of pricing out grandma and grandpa, you're pricing out mom and dad. And I'm going to have a big problem with that. A lot of people in our community are going to have a big problem with that. And, even if you say, well, now the burden's not on property taxes, well, for the working class and for everybody who gets an income, that's $1,000, $800 that they don't have to put towards their property taxes or whatever it is that they want. This, to me, is going to get a very visceral reaction. And you're seeing it in Fairfield. This is going to get a very visceral reaction from our community if we try to go with a 0.75% earned income.
Well, if you're going to quote board members, quote them correctly. I said effective tax rate, not millage, right? Because it's a combination of all the tax factors that the community faces. Secondarily, what's nice about this is it gives us flexibility. So as you look at the potential impact of the average community member, what I'm looking at is $32 million annually with the flexibility to deliver everything that we need to create better opportunities for our students. When you look at our current enrollment between 17,000 and 18,000, that turns into $5 a day per student. So I think going to the community who wants better opportunities for our students, who wants to make sure we have an educational system that delivers those workers for the businesses that you're talking about, and saying it's not worth $5 a day to improve those educational outcomes of those students is a tough situation to live in this community. I think our community believes in education. I've heard that from people who are retirees. I've heard it from people who are moving into this district. So for me, having a flexible system that lets us make sure that we're operationally solvent and we only have to go once, as well as deliver expanded opportunities for our students, as we've talked about, is a really good option. And I'd love to have the community's feedback in form of a vote rather than anecdotal stories as we talk to them, as we run into them.
Something else I will share about this topic. There are two different financing mechanisms. The maximum allowable term that you can have on a COPS issue, which is how you would finance this project through an earned income tax. It's a general funded debt certificate of participation, is a maximum term of 27 years versus the 37 years. So it is 10 years less in time.
And this is just to send to the auditor, so I think I'm willing to see what both of them look like. There's no harm in doing the resolution necessity to see what they look like. We're not committing to anything tonight, so that's just.
And just to clarify, Adam, so you're saying if we do a bond issue, that will be a taxpayer payment for 37 years. If we were to do the earned income tax, that would be a tax payment for 27 years. And it would only apply to earned income. It would not apply to investment income nor Social Security payments, correct?
That's correct, as well as pensions. However, not exactly all correct. 27 years is the term of the financing. The financing term of the bond would be 37 and then done. On the income tax, it would be 27 years, and then the financing part of that, the financing component of that would be done, which equates to about half.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, once a continuing earned income is voted on, it can be repealed down the road, even though it has a feel for being locked forever. It can be repealed if the community would generate. There is always the risk of that, okay, if the community would put it on the ballot for a repeal, okay, after 5 years, after a 5-year term.
Anything else? Anybody else? Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Mr. Wynn?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes. Treasurer's recommendation A through C, approval of board minutes, approval of monthly financials, approval of the ACFR gap conversion services and SEFA preparation services with Plattenberg and Associates Incorporated. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Zink, you want to tell us what all those numbers
Most of this stuff's pretty typical of our meetings. The different one is going to be the Act for Gap conversion services and the CEFA preparation. That was a mouthful. I was getting ready to say what CEFA stands for, and I couldn't tell you exactly what it is. It's our grant reporting. But Plattenberg's been with Lakota since the 90s, okay, and they've been doing this for a long period of time. This is a 2-year contract. This would be for gap conversion of fiscal year 26 and then fiscal year 27. What that is we do cash accounting every day, and then at the end we convert it over to gap to stay in compliance with the state of Ohio.
Any questions for Mr. Zink on all of the capital letters? Okay. If not, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Mr. Wynn?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes. Superintendent recommendations A through E, approval of personnel items, approval of resolution declaring transportation impractical for 25-26 school year, approval of contracts, approved to amend the 26-27 school calendar, and approved donations. Do I have a motion?
So
Can I
moved.
ask to have personnel pulled out separately, please?
Yes. This is for,
I'll make a motion for B through E.
do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Dr. Whiteley, do you want to explain some of those things?
Yes, the contracts that you see there, one of those is for just a renewal or a 3-year contract for hometown ticketing. It's a renewal of our existing contract. There's no significant changes to that. The other contract is for an add-on to our Peach Jar contract. That's where different community organizations and things kind of post flyers and things, and that is ensures that we are ADA compliant to be up to speed with that current law. So those are those 2 contracts. And then the calendar revision is because the last day of school was wrong on that calendar. The colors were not appropriate, and we had 1 too many days. So we needed to adjust that and get that fixed so that people know when the accurate last day of school is for next year. So that has been corrected.
Any other discussion? Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Mr. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes. I need a motion for approved personnel items.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? No discussion? All right, Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
No.
Mr. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes. Closing comments. Let's start with Mr. Nguyen.
On Tuesday, was it? Yeah, last Tuesday, I know Alex and I had the opportunity to go visit the Heritage Early Childhood School and see the birds that all the kids had
bird
made.
store?
The bird store, that's right, thank you. The bird store that was very cute, very sweet, so I appreciate Principal Schneider and all the staff that helped that go on. You know, it's a privilege to serve on this board and represent this community. Thank you for the honor.
Great. Mr. Argo?
So I guess 2 main things I wanted to say. So, one, you know, we had a lot of discussion today about the different options for how we could potentially fund our master facilities plan. Remember that in addition to the in-meeting public comment, there are a variety of ways you can reach out to us. So send us an email. I mean, we love feedback because sometimes it can be hard to go out and get people to show up. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. It's going to have to be a tough decision, but any feedback that we can take, we would enjoy having. The other thing that I'd like to say is this week is the start of Teacher Appreciation Week, and I know all of our PTAs and PTSOs, if they haven't already started, are doing some large kind of all staff, not just teacher appreciation this week. So if you're a part of a PTA, make sure you reach out and see if there's something that you can do, because I know our staff really appreciates all the things that come to them on this week. And that's all I've got.
Mr. Schaefer?
So building on Staff Appreciation Week and all the work that our volunteers do to make our staff feel special this week, we had the opportunity to attend the Barbasou Volunteer Spirit Award, which is a ceremony every year where each school gets to celebrate a volunteer in their building. It's also a recruiting event for those who are in any school beyond the early childhood schools, so the elementary principals get to see who they can recruit from the lower grades, etc. It's always one of the loveliest days of the year because it reminds us of all the extra things that our community does for our kids to make their experience just that much richer in schools. And so it's a wonderful day to celebrate and to get all the buildings together and to hear so many stories about everything that's happening. So thank you to everyone who volunteers. If anyone would like to volunteer, they're always in need of more volunteers. Your goal can be to be a Barbasou winner next year. I bet you could achieve that goal with a surprisingly little effort, particularly in some buildings who are desperate for volunteers. So don't be afraid to sign up and help, especially they're building their boards for next year. We're hearing some buildings don't even have enough people to fill their boards, probably most buildings, but particularly even just the exec team. So please, please get involved. The musicals at both of the high schools were wonderful. Thank you to all the work that goes into those and how many people participate. We've had and are having band concerts, musical or vocal performances. It's a busy time of year. Prom, I think one school had prom and one,
Both. They're
both
both
are now
downtown.
done. Yeah, I guess I wrote that one where meeting was going to be last week. So congratulations that, again, we didn't make the news with prom. That's a good thing. And thank you, and let's go into the end of the year strong.
Mr. Horton?
Yes, so I think it was a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I get to wear a lot of hats, and one of my favorite is a parent volunteer. And so I and many other parents were volunteers at Lakota East PTSO to evaluate the scholarship applications that the PTSO gives out to the students. And then I was honored to be able to actually present those to the students at awards night. And it's such a great testament to read the stories of our students, the obstacles they've overcome, the achievements that they've made, and then to be able to participate in that moment where you get to see all of the accolades and the honors and the great work that our students have done. And so it was just a really great reaffirming moment, as well as the beginning of the Blitzkrieg graduation that happens. I went through this last year with my daughter, who was a senior, and now all the senior parents are right in that Blitzkrieg to graduation. And I'm really looking forward to us attending the graduations here in about two and a half weeks, right? 2 weeks, yeah. So, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Zink?
Yeah, the graduations will be here before we know it. That creates quite the long week. I was just told tonight that it's at 8 p.m.s down there at
I know.
Xavier. That's going to make some late ones, but it's a wonderful event, and it's nice to be able to participate in that. Also, big shout out to when I first started here at Lakota, we had 2 high school principals, Mr. Card and Miss Davis, and both of them just landed this past week superintendent jobs. Mr. Card coming back to Butler County, and Miss Davis headed to, I believe that's Claremont
Forest Hills?
County.
Yeah,
Is that Claremont County? Yeah, Forest Hills.
that's Claremont County, yeah.
So congratulations to both of those on the new opportunities.
Dr. Whiteley?
You know, I had the privilege of attending prom on Saturday just to see how lovely our students looked. We have great kids. Literally, it's the first text I sent when I left that event was, we just have great kids. And again, superintendent and principals will tell you that when the phone doesn't ring, it's a good night, right? Because we just want all kids to be safe. That end of the year, we have Parade of Graduates, even before graduation, coming on May 18th at 10 a.m. That is just such a heartfelt, I mean, you can just see the joy and the tears they're holding back as they engage in that. And then also, I would be remiss, we're in Staff Appreciation Week and Teacher Appreciation Week for sure, but retirements. It is also that time of year where we have the Parade of Graduates and we have our Parade of Retirements, actually. So that retirement celebration is on May 11th at 5 o'clock in the East Hub. And just being able to celebrate the service and the time and the years. It's unbelievable how many people have spent their entire careers or the majority of their career here at Lakota Local Schools. And so to be able to say thank you to them would be a powerful evening. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. Really just to echo what everybody said, I read something on Facebook the other day that people call this Maycember because it's as hectic as December. So it is crazy, everything that's going on. Last week, we had military commitment ceremonies at both schools, and both of those are always moving and always impressive to see our young people step up. Staff appreciation. We appreciate our staff every day, but I like it that this 1 week, we really focus on all the little things that PTSOs do for our staff. And the way they get the students involved with writing notes to the teachers and, thank you cards and things. So I really do appreciate that. As far as the volunteers, I'm going to echo everybody who's sat up at this table. We've all been volunteers in some aspect before we sat on the board. I'm sure even Mr. Wynn has done some volunteering in his day. So if you can help out your PTSO, there are a handful, I don't know how many, some PTSOs that may have to dissolve because in order to keep your nonprofit 501c3, you have to have an executive board, a president, a treasurer, a secretary at least, maybe a vice president. But there are some buildings that are in the risk of not being able to fill that because they just don't have the people. And to me, that would be so sad if schools lost PTSOs or PTOs or parent councils, whatever they're called in buildings. What they do for our staff and our students is on a daily basis that no one hears about is remarkable. And I would hate to see schools not be able to have that. And I understand that people are busy, but if you could just give a little bit of your time, I think it would make a huge difference. So reach out to your PTSO in your school or your PTA or parent council and find out if there's any openings, and if you have some time that you can fill. I don't think the commitment is that large to sit on an executive board, but just to be able to keep the PTA running, they have to have an executive board. So think about that if you have some time. And with that.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Sorry, I forgot something.
Oh,
May I?
Mr. Wynn, you were supposed to be all over this. Go.
I know, right?
I'm giving you a dispensation to have a second closing comment.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So, the OSBA gives a number of awards to, people and certainly board members. And, one of the awards that they give is recognizing, veterans who serve on boards. And so the OSBA gave the Distinguished Board Member Award recognizing Mrs. Julie Schaefer as a 15-year veteran board member for continued dedication and commitment for public education as a school board member. So and this is signed on behalf of Ms. Mary Cleveland, the OSBA president, and Mr. Tom Hosler, the chief executive officer. So, Julie, that's right. So I just wanted to recognize her while the camera's rolling and give her this distinguished award. Congratulations.
If I can just say, I mean, it truly has been an honor. I do, when I hear 15 years, think I've been doing this too darn long. But it has been my honor and my privilege to serve this community. I will not be running again, so this will be my last recognition of that. But I am so thankful to have had the honor to make a difference in the lives of so many kids. And I will say, I had some important paying jobs in my life where I made a lot more money, but none have been more impactful or harder because of the impact of the decisions you're making on the kids that you serve and how significant that is and how life-changing that can be for these kids. And it truly has been my privilege. So, thank you.
All right, now I need a motion to enter into executive session and consider the employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official per Ohio Revised Code 121.22G1A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Zink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Mr. Wynn?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes. We will be adjourning when we come out of executive session. We will not be taking any other action than that. I'm pulling us out of executive session and asking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Ben, second.
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Nguyen.
Ben,
Your mic.
you're so quiet down there. Any discussion?
It's my night.
Okay, Adam, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Nguyen? Mr. Argo?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
It's like in the middle of the black at the bottom.